President Donald Trump wants to make America great again, and he means business. These two go hand in hand. The new US president has been in the White House for just over a week, and just yesterday he had his first call with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. President Trump invited Prime Minister Modi to visit the White House next month. This makes Prime Minister Modi among the first global leaders to meet the US president. It's also a sign of India's growing importance under the new Trump administration. But the White House statement very interestingly says the president emphasized the importance of India increasing its procurement of American-made security equipment and moving towards a fair bilateral trading relationship. Ab ki baar Trump Sarkar is fast turning into ab ki baar Amriki Karobar or American business. Prime Minister Modi will meet President Trump as many as 3 times this year. Joining me to discuss what could be on the agenda are Air Marshal Diptendu Chaudhary, Srinath Sridharan and Ambassador Suresh Goyal. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus show. Air Marshal Chaudhary, I want to start by asking this. Something about President Trump, you have to give it to him. He is very direct in what he wants. And he wants to sell us American arms. What are the American weapons that the armed forces are looking for after all these buys? We've already bought something like $20 billion worth of American hardware in the last 20 years, roughly a rate of 1 or 2 billion a year. What more do we need from the United States? What will keep Trump happy?
Thank you, Sandeep. At the outset, I would just want to put one fact across that President Trump, as you mentioned, he is a sort of a radical disruptor. He doesn't necessarily go by diplomatic norms, and his approach to this whole business of running a nation is from more of a business model.
Yes.
I would think, rather than really larger world security. And yes, most certainly it's US focused and US interest focused.
Yes.
And if you see over the years, I think there has been a significant increase of US military sales.
Yes.
And there are a whole lot of agreements we've had over the years. But when it finally comes down to the US looking at broader defense cooperation,
yes,
a lot of it has been focused on the larger Indo-Pacific construct.
Right.
And which is essentially the maritime domain.
Right.
And it's really more of, what should I say, a more benign aspect of security, where it's more of monitoring, maritime domain awareness, what's happening in the larger Indian Ocean construct.
Yes.
Not as much as possibly what concerns us deeply is a continental threat.
Yes.
So a lot of the...
You mean the land and the air threats facing China, the LAC?
Absolutely, absolutely. So a lot of the purchases which we have, which has been done, a lot of them are Navy focused. We've had the Mine Seahawks, the MQ-9s, the Boeing immense Boeing deal of the P-81s, which the Navy has. So if you notice, they're all focusing towards maritime domain awareness, which most certainly suits our naval initiatives and interests.
Right.
And consequently is to the advantage of the US as well.
Right.
The challenge is getting into arms sales and deals with the US, where they hold the handle, the master switch in their equipment, and that's where the challenge lies. Because and given the sort of radical and I would say President Trump's switch on and off approach to geopolitics.
Right. Yes.
It's he would probably at drop of every hat say, okay, stop this, stop that.
Right. So it's not sanction proof. American equipment is not sanction proof. I think that's the biggest worry. But there is this huge arms deal in the pipeline which the Indian Air Force really needs, which is the fighter aircraft, the MRFA, multi-role fighter aircraft. Do you believe that the United States could make, how to put it, an offer that we can't refuse on the MRFA, for instance? The F-35, could that be on offer under the Trump administration?
See, the F-35 is it's a platform which does not necessarily, just because it's a good aircraft and it has a huge amount of international, the US has sold it to several nations. Fact is, it doesn't necessarily meet all our air power requirements.
Right.
And the kind of platforms which have been on offer, especially for this 114 aircraft deal, which has been going on for such a long time,
Yes.
are all older platforms. The
Right.
F-18 upgraded, the F-16 E and X versions, upgraded versions, and the sort of the F-16 Redux, which they are calling it the F-21.
Yes.
But the fact of it is they are much older technology, and they will have a
Right.
certain limited
So if the
life.
Americans were to offer something new at Air Marshal Chaudhry, something that's newer than the F-35, you're saying that would make India go in for this deal, a sixth generation fighter perhaps?
Absolutely. That is something, if we probably they offer a partnership in a
Right.
development of that,
Right.
is something which would probably definitely raise interest in
A
our
partnership for a sixth generation aircraft, given the fact that we are yet to field a fifth generation aircraft. But I'll come to the impact of this, what it could mean for Atmanirbhar Bharat a little later. I want to bring in Srinath Sridharan right now. Srinath, I'm just reading the news. The Americans have said they'll impose tariffs on countries that harm America. India is one of them. We've been called Tariff King, President Donald Trump. But what do you make of this? This is a shape of things to come, that he is going to talk to us on trade and the defense trade and get us to lower tariffs. Where are the sectors you think they could kind of push in?
Sandeep, I think it comes at an intersection of not just President Trump seemingly having the upper hand, but we are also going to negotiate from position of weakening economy, so to speak. We are
Yes.
becoming more a consumption economy. We have suddenly realized that we are outplayed by both in US and China in the AI game, at least for
Yes.
now. That's a concern. And what we should also worry about is US President Biden in his parting gift to India actually placed us as tier 3 country in the
Yes.
AI diffusion regime, which means
Yes.
that India needs approval from the US to even buy chipsets after 2027.
Right.
So I think I think from the sovereign point of view, they're playing a very tougher game of pushing us out almost from every single thing: defense, access to the country, talent, H-1B visas, everything, almost
Yes.
everything. And they made it very clear that they don't believe in climate change, they don't believe in
Yes.
WHO or Paris Accord, whereas India has been, we still stick to multilateralism and we believe in some of these. So I think
Yes.
it is going to be a tough one, negotiation of sorts, because both the heads of state are very clearly disruptors who are reshaping their own traditional power structures in their countries. President Trump and Prime Minister Modi. So I think it is also going to be, what is it that we give in? I mean, will we end up giving access to, I think what US will want is more access to agriculture and food processing, more access to financial services and deep tech ecosystem in India. And all of these are politically sensitive or regulatorily sensitive. So how do we navigate that? I think it is
so that you just mentioned agriculture. Agriculture is something that will set off alarms everywhere in India. I think center, state, everyone is united on this fact that you cannot allow American access into the agricultural market. And that's something that the US has been gently pushing for several years now. How do we handle this kind of pressure on the agricultural sector? The fact that...
Yeah, I think the only way India can handle it is if we actually set up food processing units as JVs where the Indians have the majority stake. I mean, it's a playbook that China has done for many, many years. Facebook still doesn't have access to China. So I think, will we have the political gumption to get up and say, hey, any of these deals, almost very similar to FDI in insurance sector, right? We did not allow it initially and slowly opened it up in 20 years. So similarly, I think anything that is about food and any security measures, can we bring in an FDI in a limited way? I think there's an angle there. But what we must also remember, or the larger context, if you look at it, Sandeep, I think we have seen three things play out this week before this call happened. I mean, one, Trump saying that he likes President Xi and China, and except for that he was very upset about COVID, everything is fine and they will build path. That's a very big messaging, I think, to President Putin, not to anybody else. Two, I think it's also a messaging to all other nations, including India, considering that last week the foreign ministers of Quad met. It's also a message to India saying that we're going to come to you, we're going to come after you, probably. And the third one that's also happening is that they've been speaking about, President Trump has been speaking about AI almost every single day since he took charge. He even reacted to DeepSeek's launch by saying that, hey, US needs to do more. I think, again, is it an attempt to say that US is still the big brother going forward in all the sectors? I think that very clearly is there. It's not just about making America great again. It's also to say that 21st century, any single sector that is going to be very dominant. US will be the big brother. I think that's the message. And
Yes.
other key message is oil, that they still believe in fossil fuel oil, which means that are we going to get India and Russia? Russia has been buying that oil.
Yes.
Is that another signaling that US is doing? Because Saudi has gone ahead and said we are going to invest in US AI infrastructure.
Yes.
So some of these have to be seen in conjunction. So I think the negotiation is going to be a lot more than what we're seeing on the surface.
Right. So the 4 years of the Biden administration, Srinath, would seem like a holiday compared to what we are going to face until 2029, looks like.
Yes and no, Pradeep. I mean, yes, because it's no different from how the Indian federal and state government structure has been done, right? I mean, end of the day, let's take a case in point, contentious topic. Despite the double engine sarkar in most of the states in India,
yes.
Our very fact that the NEP, the new education policy, has not even implemented or rolled off in most of those states.
Right.
So it's also a messaging that saying that while there is a federal intent, are we not able to get it? And I think that's what we're also seeing in the US. I think they closed ranks when it comes to not giving up what they want for their own country.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I'm going to go over to Air Marshal Chaudhary now. You know, the point that you made about going in for the latest American technology, like the 6th generation fighter, which is still in the works. What does this mean, Air Marshal, for our own indigenous defense programs? We have a 5th generation fighter aircraft program. We have a 6th generation fighter aircraft program. If we start collaborating, do you feel that at some point our indigenous programs will take a backseat? It's much easier to get technology from the United States in joint ventures. You don't really learn that much as you do when you're trying to do it by yourself. What's your take on this?
I would personally think doing anything with the US is a bit of a loaded dice because it has long-term consequences.
Right.
And what might seem strategic expediency at this point in time will probably have some unintended consequences down the line.
Right.
After through your development if you go wholly with the US as a partner. So I personally, from my personal perspective, I think, we should have learned our lessons that increasingly, with the polarization, the way things have been, Russia dependency on the arms, on certain arms and ammunition and weapon systems. And they have been pretty consistent throughout the years. Whereas with the US, there's a huge challenge that anything we go, the moment we tilt towards the US, or we tilt away back to the Soviets, it will always be on a binary of the US and, I beg your pardon, the Russians.
Yes.
Yeah, Russians. There's a bit of a Cold War mentality, I think. Anyway.
Yes, the Cold War is returning. That's, that's just tells you how it's almost indistinguishable now. It's like, being back in the Cold War era.
So the challenge, I would think, is that India's strategic autonomy in the defense sector will always be a challenge. And it's something which the US, in its present form, where it's not just about making America great again. You look at the Ukraine war, the amount of FMS sale and the weapon sales which have been going on, and if the Ukraine war starts winding down, at some point there will be a larger global push for pushing the arms sales.
Alternate markets for those $50-60 billion worth of weapons.
So there is a danger there that a significant American tilt will be at a cost in the long term because the interests and relationships between us and the US have sort of waxed and waned over the years, and there is no strategic consistency in it.
There's Ambassador Goel now joins us. Ambassador Goel, we're just talking about the various pillars of the India-US relationship under President Trump. One is, of course, arms sales. He's very clearly said that upfront. He wants us to buy more American arms. Then there is the issue of tariffs, the high tariffs, because we have a trade surplus with the United States. He wants to bring that down to the US advantage. But there is one other aspect, Ambassador Goel. The fact is that he has said that Prime Minister Modi, that's President Trump has said that Prime Minister Modi will do what is right on illegal immigrants. And he's underlined that discussions are going on with you see immigrations, illegal immigrants being a thorny issue between India and the United States. We are the 4th largest source of illegal immigrants into the United States. It's not a very large number, but it's significant for the president to raise it in his talks with India. Give us a sense of how important this issue is. How is it going to play out in the next couple of months?
Uh, Let me put it this way. When President Trump began with the illegal immigrants, his mind was more really towards the south of the USA than to the east, really, at that time, even though that's a problem. And the illegal immigrants would really have lots of Indians. So, in that sense, when E.M. Jaishankar said that, yes, we will take them back, provided we can prove that they're Indians,
Yes.
their nationality has to be proven. And nobody can doubt it. Second thing about the illegal immigrants is that every country has a right to push off the illegal immigrants,
Yes.
provided they can prove where they come from.
You know, Srinath, is China, you think, the elephant in the room that's driving India and the United States together? You know, Trump 1.0, for instance, it revived the Quad, which is now bigger and stronger. And in fact, there's going to be a major heads of government meeting of the Quad countries to be hosted by Prime Minister Modi. And there's a full-on tech battle between the US and China after the launch of AI, models over the last couple of years. And there's a CHIPS Act that the US has brought out. Do you see China being the factor that will drive India and the United States closer together?
So I don't know whether Trump intends to use China as the bargaining chip to bring India closer, or is he trying to, what I call probably 2026, we could see the Trump winning the Nobel Peace Prize moments of sorts. Is he going to use China to cut Russia to size to bring them to the table, stop the Ukraine war and the Gaza issues, and say, you know what, I did it. But I think more importantly, it's not just about China. I think he's using diplomacy today as simple for him, just another tool. The traditional diplomacy used various forms, and today he's using everything as bargaining. And you're dealing with a global leader who uses X as more as the press release platform rather than the traditional structures of power. I think that is what is going to set the bigger elephant in the room. The bigger elephant in the room is, can he navigate those power structures globally all the time? Because if you're going to say you don't believe in multilateralism, you don't believe in climate, you're going to pull out of almost everything. Will US at some point in time be isolated themselves? Which means that what if China becomes, let's say, they've been playing the dead diplomacy over the last 20 years. Will they use some other tool to say China is going to be the new hegemony to deal with? So I think while we are all worried about whether Chinese economy is actually safe, stable, the banking system has been going through turmoil, all of that. But I think I would never underwrite, or give up China very quickly. They must be up to something. And that's the larger worry I think we should have in mind.
The larger worry indeed. And, rumors of China's economic demise are greatly exaggerated. But Ambassador Goyal, you see China being used as a bargaining chip, as Srinath just said, to drive India and the United States closer together. It was always there, this kind of fear of China. But now in the last couple of weeks, it seems to have accelerated, given that intense competition that's underway. It's a strategic battle that the United States and China are locked in currently. It's a near peer adversary that they face. Do you see China being the factor that's driving both our countries together, India and the United States?
Again, I'm not quite sure as to how long this will happen. Yes. At present, China seems to be a factor because of Indo-Pacific strategic concerns, etc., etc. However, President Trump also said just a day ago, I think yesterday or day before yesterday, that he doesn't really see the need to impose tariffs against China. I think that is what he meant. And therefore, if in future, somehow the business interests of his close allies with China come into play, and he doesn't think it's necessary to really be tough with China, where would India be? And therefore, I think we need to develop our own equations with the USA, where China can be a factor, but not really totally dependent on China. We need to have our own bilateral metrics and our own dynamics.
The need to have our own bilateral, dynamic with China. And Marshal Chaudhary, it's very significant that the day that Prime Minister Modi spoke with President Trump is also the day that our Foreign Secretary was in Beijing meeting his counterpart there, Wang Yi. You see a coincidence in this meeting between the Foreign Secretaries on the day that President Trump made that call? This is balancing the bilateral as well.
Putting the two together would be very, conveniently seen as a sort of a coincidental happening, which you can draw much from. But I don't think that's really the issue here. But what is important, as I mentioned earlier, that India's approach and present rise of where we have reached today as a nation, from its strategic autonomy and independent foreign policy, will increasingly, in my perspective, my personal opinion, will come under increasing sort of pressure with U.S. interests, larger U.S. interests, because from what we have seen of President Trump, he loves grandstanding. He would love to be, like was mentioned earlier, they would love to come back into the center, bring U.S. back to the center stage of world leadership. But like I said, it has undercurrents of business interests. And India would do well to tread carefully here to ensure its long-term strategic interests kept alive. And like you mentioned earlier, that how would it sort of impact our long-term R&D towards the 5th and 6th generation fighters, for example. It's something, these are long-term strategic issues which will need sustenance. Now you start with a tilt towards the US, and that now gets yanked out at a certain stage, will put us again back on the mat and roll us back years and years. So while it is very difficult for India and to swiftly, it's very easier said than done that, we'll jump, do this, leapfrog the technology and move into research and development. But it takes a long time. It takes a lot of strategic patience. It needs a lot of strategic investment of everything at every level. And that is where we find that the relationship with the US, I won't say it's fickle, but it's, like I said, the easier thing is it's an on-off, switch on and off relationship. And while it's all nice and hunky-dory right now, but in the long term, and when in the ride of US's gain to become a world leader again, to reclaim its place, I think that's where we will never be seen really as an equal partner. And that is what I think we should be careful about.
We should be careful about indeed. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for illustrating the pitfalls that lie ahead. India's independent foreign policy, our defense technology, all need to be looked after very carefully, because these are the challenges when you're looking at a rising United States challenging a rising China as well. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us.